in my opinion, is probably the most important vitamin that nobody really pays attention to. And I think what makes it super important in this day, in fact, right now, is the fact that it supports our immune systems. And it not only supports our immune systems as far as like targeting certain things, but it's also our innate immune system, which if we're faced with a new virus or bacteria or something our body hasn't seen, it's really one of the most important nutrients to support our body's ability to fight off that microbe. And so when we hear about these like coronavirus or, the flu, I think that if we have the vitamin A in our body, we don't have to worry as much about. We are more protected.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. This is episode 233 and our guest is Pamela Schoenfeld. Pam is a registered dietitian and nutritionist who regained her health and was able to become a dietitian at the age of 50, thanks in particular to her consumption of liver and other high vitamin A foods. And today we discuss exactly what vitamin A can do for all of us. It is truly an amazing vitamin. Pam talks about what a powerhouse it is for the immune system, in what foods it is most bioavailable, including the aforementioned liver, and she talks about what she has seen it do for her clients, from clearing up acne and poor night vision to resolving low energy and fatigue. Most of us are vitamin A deficient, so we really need to listen up. Now is the time to bone up on where we can find it and how we can benefit from its protective properties. Before we dive into the interview, I want to remind you of something. The Weston A. Price Foundation has trifold brochures that cover a variety of topics from myths and truths about soy, nutrition for mental health, butter is better, how to protect against cancer with food, dangers of vegan and vegetarian diets, sugar alert, and much more. They are only 25 cents each, and they are even less expensive if you buy in bulk. So check them out. Go to our products page at westonaprice.org, and the link is in the show notes. And this episode is brought to you in part by Grass-Fed Thymus by Ancestral Supplements. Ancestral Supplements makes New Zealand-sourced nose-to-tail organ meats, bone marrow, and thymus in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. Based on the ancient wisdom of like supports like, consuming thymus may strengthen and support our own thymus. Find out how thymus can help us all manage allergies and support immune health. Visit ancestralsupplements.com to see what they can do for you. Ancestral Supplements, putting back in what the modern world has left out. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Pam.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be with you and your audience today, Hilda. It's really a great privilege for me to speak on this podcast because I know how many people are, listening and looking for great information to help them feel better and live better lives.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. We actually get so many testimonials and it's really encouraging because we're just doing the best we can to get this word out. And I wanted to talk to you today about this topic that you're all jazzed about that I think you spoke about at the conference, vitamin A. Vitamin A amazing, you called it. What makes it so great for our bodies, Pam?
Do you have about 12 hours? No, I'm just kidding. But vitamin A is, in my opinion, is probably the most important vitamin that nobody really pays attention to. And I think what makes it super important in this day, in fact, right now, is the fact that it supports our immune systems. And it not only supports our immune systems as far as like targeting certain things, but it's also our innate immune system, which if we're faced with a new virus or bacteria or something our body hasn't seen, it's really one of the most important nutrients to support our body's ability to fight off that microbe. And so when we hear about these like coronavirus or, the flu, I think that if we have the vitamin A in our body, we don't have to worry as much about. We are more protected. That's my belief based on my own experience and what I've seen in other clients, my patients, but also from what I've read in the literature.
Of course. No, Sally was just telling me the other day the very thing you said, that the coronavirus is really something that our bodies can fight, most likely, like you said, when we support our bodies with the right nutrients, especially when we get enough of that vitamin A. She's always talking about vitamin A. Now, why do you think it's so overlooked, Pam?
Well, because there's this belief that too much vitamin A is going to cause all sorts of problems, bone loss, problems with baby, birth defects. I think bone loss and birth defects are the two main ones. And that the widespread misbelief that these are both misbeliefs, actually, that we get plenty in our diet, which is really, really interesting. I don't even know how we actually, that continues to be a belief in the conventional medical community. It's interesting you mentioned about the vaccinations. We were watching the news the other day about, the coronavirus, and Adam goes, yeah, this is my husband. He goes, yeah, there's not going to be, they say they can't make a vaccine for at least a year or something like that. I said, well, would you get that vaccine? And, it was a question, if it came into our country and all of a sudden they had a vaccine, would we get it? No, we don't get the flu vaccine or anything like that, or the pneumonia vaccine or the chickenpox vaccine or any of that stuff. And he said, no, you know, but it was interesting because a lot of people are waiting for that to protect themselves when they can do so many things right now to really be much better protected against these things.
Absolutely. So what we want to know now is how can we best nourish ourselves to get that vitamin A? Because you said people think they're getting it and they're not.
Yeah, well, not only people, actually the medical community pretty much doesn't think vitamin A is a problem. And you were with me. We went to the FDA. Remember, they're taking it off the label, the required nutrients that are listed on a food label. They're removing vitamin A, and now it's going to be replaced with vitamin D. And, vitamin D is still a problem in this country, but it's not the problem it was 5 or 10 years ago with so much awareness by even conventional doctors, because I work in I have an interesting practice because I see a lot of people that are interested in functional alternative, ancestral, holistic nutrition and medicine and things like that. But a lot of my patients are just regular people that don't really know much about this at all. And they're seeing, normal doctors who, believe they know a little bit about nutrition. And I say believe because there's so many gaps there. And they'll have all their patients on vitamin D, or they'll be testing them from vitamin D. It's pretty normal nowadays. I'd say it's abnormal if a person has never been tested for vitamin A when we're talking they're already adults. And there's so much attention to be placed on supplementing with vitamin D. And then there's this belief that, vitamin A, nobody needs to worry about that. Just eat your vegetables, just eat your greens. Well, there's a couple things here. One, people don't eat enough of those foods. But two, even more important, even if you eat those foods, the ability to extract and utilize the vitamin A in those foods, because we have to convert it from carotenoids and we have to absorb it, which is hard too, is really, really variable. And for some people like myself, because I've had the gene testing, I do it really badly. And for other people, they might do it okay. There are probably people that do it pretty well just on vegetables. But unless you see somebody who can evaluate for that, you're taking a chance by relying just on vegetables.
Let me make sure this sinks in for us, Pam. So you're saying even if we think the vegetable contains something that's going to help us with vitamin A, it's actually a precursor to vitamin A. And so our body needs to convert it to vitamin A, and not all of our bodies can do that easily. Is that what I hear you saying?
That is totally correct. And that is partly based on our genetics, but it can also be based on things like our metabolism, hypothyroidism, low intakes of zinc, low intake of iron, not enough protein, dysbiosis in the gut. There's so many things that can cut down the ability to convert the carotenoids that are found in vegetables, especially orange vegetables, and to a much lesser extent green vegetables. It's really hard to get carotenoids out of green vegetables, even though they're there. And so the ability to extract and convert beta carotene and convert it into vitamin A varies between 10 and 90% between individuals. 10% and 90%.
Wow, that's a huge variable.
Yeah. And I'm one of those 10% people. I know I am, because before I learned about the Weston A. Price Foundation, and, this was back in 2000, I thought I was doing really well with my vitamin A. I would eat red peppers and sweet potatoes and carrots. And now I know, looking back then, I had clear signs of vitamin A deficiency. I had, this is a little personal, but I had irregular periods, which is a sign of vitamin A deficiency. I had dry eyes. I had bumpy skin. I had low energy, and I got sick I never get sick now, but that's another story. But I got sick a few times a year, and I was chronically tired. And, I was a semi-vegetarian, and it was really a very bad match for my genes. I've had the strategene test done, which requires you to have the 23andMe gene test done first.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a very low converter genetically. And then if I add all the other things that were probably not correct in my diet, like I found out later I was zinc deficient, probably from not eating enough meat and eating too many high phytate vegetable or plant foods. I mean, it was just the perfect storm for vitamin A deficiency.
Okay, so in vegetables, there are carotenoids or precursors to vitamin A that our bodies need to convert. That sounds like a lot of work, and we don't even know how well our bodies do that. Not always tested for these things. But are there foods where the vitamin A is ready to go?
Well, I think you know the answer to that, but I'm going to, and I bet many of the people that are listening do too. Now, liver is the number one dietary source of vitamin A that people in our community would probably recognize. Oh, I've heard that that's high in vitamin A. Other foods are pretty high too. For example, fish eyes and a couple other organs, and I can't remember them all at the top of my head, in the animals or the fish that people eat. But, it's funny. I remember when I first was part of the Weston Price, and I went to my first conference, and we all went to this restaurant, and I happened to be sitting at this table with Sally. I mean, what a privilege, right?
Yeah.
18 years ago. And then there was a challenge, and the fish was placed on the table, and Sally said, "Oh, well, whoever eat the eye of the fish will get a free, Nourishing Traditions book." And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So I did it, and but there was only 2 eyes in the fish, right? But so then the other food, and we don't always think of it as a food because it really is a food, but it's often thought of as a supplement, is the cod liver oil. So those are the 2 really, really rich sources of vitamin A. And those were the things I immediately started adding to my diet when I came across the Weston A. Price information on the internet, like almost 20 years ago. I think my life would be, I can't even imagine what it would be if I was going in the direction I was going then. Well, for example, I became a dietitian 10 years ago. I would have never had the energy or the stamina to become a dietitian. And I probably would have been sick too often to even get through the program.
So let me just stop you for a minute there and ask you about cod liver oil. I've heard Sally say that what's nice about cod liver oil is it has the right balance of vitamins A and D, and that we need to keep that in mind because some of these fat-soluble vitamins work together synergistically in the body. Is that right?
Oh, yes, totally. And in fact, Sally says it. She was one of the leading first people to actually say this. And of course, Chris Masterjohn has explained this in scientific details in several of the articles he's written. And I think the main takeaway we can get from this is that vitamin A and D work synergistically. As you said, one requires the other. In fact, every time you use a molecule of vitamin D, you need a molecule of vitamin A. And if you have enough vitamin A and D, it's very difficult to take too much if they're in the right ratio of either of them. So if you have adequate vitamin D, it's very hard to have too much vitamin A. Not that it can't be done, but it's very hard. And if you have enough vitamin A, it's a lot less likely that you can overdose, so to speak, on vitamin D. And incidentally, a lot of people are overdosing on vitamin D. And overdosing on vitamin D may not show up for years because it's going to contribute to microcalcifications in the body. And that's something we definitely don't want to do. We don't want, that's going to cause more hardening of the arteries, potentially kidney stones, and even things like your collagen gets calcified. So your body actually becomes a little stiff. Yeah, so no, it's totally, and that's why it exists in nature in the cod liver oil. And cod liver oil is one of the few things that actually does have that great balance of vitamin A. The other thing is, if we look at historically how people got their vitamin D, I would say most of it before the Industrial Revolution was from sunshine. Mm-hmm. So if people were eating foods such as liver, and in fact, grass-fed liver, I believe, has 5 to 10 times more vitamin A from the data I've seen than actually the conventionally raised cattle who are on just, grains, because of the grass has so much of the carotenoids, the precursor to vitamin A. This is what I believe. I've just seen it on the USDA tables. For example, New Zealand liver is really, really high. And then if you look at other types of liver, like American liver, it's, maybe like I said, 20% of what the New Zealand liver has. So you don't need to eat that much liver if you're getting good grass-fed liver, and then you're outside getting the vitamin D. So that's another option. And then in the winter, if you want to do the cod liver oil, that's great because it covers your vitamin D. So I feel that the match trying to get them together is really the most important thing. And that's going to actually have the most beneficial effect on your immune system, to have both of them in balance.
Right, right. Interesting. And, you were talking about vitamin D toxicity. I haven't heard as much about that, as you were saying, as I have about vitamin A toxicity. What is it that people are saying now that they're afraid they're taking in too much vitamin A? Are they just missing this balance, or is it something else?
That's a really hard question to answer. First of all, vitamin A is an essential nutrient. So just like any other essential nutrient, you really can't be allergic to it or have a sensitivity to the nutrient itself. You might have a sensitivity to the vehicle that it's in, or you might be taking in too much. And that's possible if you have multiple sources of vitamin A in your diet. I think this stuff that's going around on the internet, and I forget who's promoting the fact that vitamin A is dangerous and we shouldn't have any in our diet. I think they're way off base. That's, but again, if you're feeling that when you eat a certain food or take a certain supplement and maybe have a reaction to it, maybe that's not the right supplement or food for you. But still, vitamin A, if you're not exceeding on a daily basis 10,000 international units, and you get at least, 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day, and that doesn't have to be neither of those have to be daily. They can be on a single day. So you could have your liver and you could have your couple days of sun exposure and you're covered for the week or two. So just think about, balancing it, or what the source that you're actually maybe sensitive to. I'd really like to talk to people firsthand that have had this reaction. I've never seen this reaction in my practice. I've only seen positive results from vitamin A.
Very interesting. And as you're talking about international units, I was like, I don't personally think about my food that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't measure how many units I'm getting of anything. I just kind of go by intuition and by balance, like you were saying. Is there a way in which I can measure that, or any of us can measure that in our diet?
Well, I don't know that it's necessary to measure it. There's an application called Chronometer or Chronometer, and that you can enter your foods in, and it's got pretty good databases in it that it draws on. Vitamin D is very low in most foods, with the exception of a few things like salmon, cod liver oil, fish eggs. Yeah, I don't want people to feel like they have to count IUs, or now it's being converted to micrograms. It's more of an awareness of, how's my body doing? So if you have signs of vitamin A deficiency, and then you decide I'm going to either do cod liver oil daily, or I'm going to eat liver at least every other week, see if those symptoms of vitamin A deficiency start disappearing. They're not going to happen overnight. Well, some of them actually do change pretty quickly.
Coming up, Pam tells stories of clients' symptoms clearing up, like poor night vision, eczema, acne, and the like, after they up their intake of vitamin A-rich foods.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Chelsea Green Publishing. Chelsea Green Publishing is recognized as a leading publisher of books about organic farming and gardening, homesteading, local food, restorative living, and diet-focused integrative health. Some recent and best-selling health titles include Cancer and the New Biology of Water by Dr. Thomas Cowan, It's All in Your Mouth by Dr. Dominic Nischwitz, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer by Naisha Winters and Jess Higgins Kelly, and The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. Go to chelseagreen.com and enter code WISE19 at checkout to receive 25% off your next print book purchase. And be sure to sign up for their newsletter and stay up to date on new releases and audiobooks. And this episode is brought to you in part by Grass-Fed Thymus by Ancestral Supplements. Ancestral Supplements makes New Zealand-sourced, nose-to-tail, organ meats, bone marrow, and thymus in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. Based on the ancient wisdom of like supports like, consuming thymus may strengthen and support our own thymus. Support your thymus this spring with unique peptides such as thymosin, thymopietin, and serum thymic factor to regulate, strengthen, and support immune health. This is more important than ever. Thymic extracts have been shown to normalize and modulate the ratio of T helper cells to suppressor cells, whether the ratio is low, as in chronic infections and cancer, or high, as in allergies and autoimmune diseases like psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. In other words, thymic factors appear to balance the immune response up or down as needed. So visit ancestralsupplements.com to see what they can do for you. ancestral supplements putting back in what the modern world has left out. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions.
And I remember specifically this one man, I go, well, how's your night vision? How's that doing? He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when you came in here last time, you said you really had a hard time driving at night. And it was difficult for you to see, and the headlights. And he goes, oh, yeah, I don't have that problem anymore. And, I see this all the time with people, and it's so great because, they've got bumps on their arm. They get sick frequently. They've got problems with dry eyes. They've got poor night vision. Some women have vaginal dryness. That's a little harder to correct because a lot of times that's also an aging thing. Or they've got skin problems like eczema, acne, and they'll come back and go, oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, it's so much better. I wonder if it's what I'm eating, And I do provide people with supplements with vitamin A. And as a dietitian, I'm very careful that I give things that I know the exact dose. But they're like, oh, yeah, I don't even need that cream my doctor gave me anymore. It's just like, it's crazy. I had a woman come, she's trying to get pregnant. I'll be seeing her again, I think next week. And this is a very personal question to ask a woman, but I said, do you have vaginal dryness? And she said, oh, yeah, that's a problem. And I said, well, okay, let's take care of your vitamin A. And I, went through the things that she could do for that. And the next time I saw her, I said, oh, it's so much better. She said, but now my nose has been running so much. I said, I think that's normal that your nose runs, because that's actually a good thing, because one of the things that vitamin A does, it makes our mucus production better, and it thins our mucus. So think about it. In the wintertime, when viruses are around and the weather's cold, I think you want your nose to run a little bit because it flushes everything out of your nasal passages, right? And also the mucus in your nose has antibacterial things that are supported by vitamin A intake. So you actually have a more bactericidal or virucidal mucus when you have an adequate vitamin A and D, and everything else that's involved in the immune system. But like I said, most people just think vitamin A is covered, because they eat sweet potatoes. But it's not. And I think that's part of the reason I almost never get sick, because everything's flushing out of my nose. I'm not saying my nose runs constantly, but if I go out in the cold weather, it's definitely running.
That's awesome. So if someone came up to you on the street, Pam, and said, give me the short list of what vitamin A can do for me, what would you say?
Okay, well, first and foremost, as we already discussed, it'll support your immune system. It possibly could help you lose weight. It possibly could help you have more energy. If you have gut issues, it's going to really help heal your gut, along with other things that, we need to do. If you have any skin problems, whether it's eczema, acne, dry skin, hyperkeratosis, which is those little rough bumps typically on the back of the arms, it's going to help with that. If you want to get pregnant, it probably can help you get pregnant. If you're a man and you don't have enough vitamin A, you might not have as good a sperm count as you possibly could. If you're a baby in utero, they wouldn't ask that question, but you would actually have a stronger immune system for life, because some of the things that are set in utero by having great nutrition including vitamin A, affect how many immune cells you're able to create in life. You'd have better lungs and better kidney function, or bigger, at least more nephrons in your kidney if you were, an infant and your mother had good sources of vitamin A in her diet. And there's evidence that it protects against cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer. I know there's autoimmune disease. If you have autoimmune disease, vitamin A is known to help modulate the immune system and help it from being overreactive. And it actually can help with even the very difficult to treat inflammatory bowel disease for some people. And again, we're not talking about vitamin A by itself. We're talking about in context of a very nourishing diet. And then the other thing is, if you look at the GAPS diet, which a lot of your listeners will be familiar with, that is a gut healing diet, also for psychological and neurological problems, because their guts affect our minds, all that stuff. Vitamin A and D in the form of cod liver oil is an integral part of that protocol.
Absolutely. I love the short list that actually turned out to be a long list, which is fantastic. And I wanted to ask you to give us a short list of foods. You mentioned liver. Isn't vitamin A also found in some dairy products like butter and cheeses?
Yes, there are definitely good sources of vitamin A. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but grass-fed dairy is a pretty good source. I don't think if you're one of those low converters that it wouldn't be enough to make up that difference. So if you ate a vegetable with butter on it, I don't think it's enough to make the difference up. However, egg yolks,
Hmm.
and I don't have the data on this. I know the foundation has had some testing done of grass-fed egg yolks, pasture chickens, their egg yolks, and that's probably a pretty good source too, because of the fact that the carotenoids in the grass will then be converted to vitamin A. But because the liver in an animal, 70 to 90% of vitamin A is stored in the liver in most mammals, I should say that. And that's why liver is the best source. And because vitamin A is absolutely essential for vision, it's concentrated in the eyes of an animal too. And I think it might be in a little bit in kidneys. I don't remember every place, but these are the typical, liver, even though it's not a commonly eaten food, I think it's a food that people are following the ancestral health principles, the wise tradition diet, are eating more of and finding ways to eat. For example, putting a quarter of the meatloaf is chopped liver, or they're making
Yes.
delicious chicken liver patés, or there's ways to make it palatable. I grew up on liver. Thank God I grew up in liver.
Hmm.
But I stopped eating it. And I think that's why I started getting really sick in college. I couldn't understand why I would always get these colds and feel lousy and just really, obviously my diet was probably not that great, but it probably had a lot to do with me not eating liver anymore, because that was a food my father prepared. And I just, I loved it, but it wasn't something that, a college student would think, oh, let's go have liver, right? I mean,
No,
and
not at
and it's
all.
certainly not on the cafeteria. And then I was interested in nutrition and all this stuff about cholesterol. It just wasn't on my radar screen that it was anything that I should eat. And now if I have an opportunity down here where I live in North Carolina, there are places that have livers. Yeah, I kind of know about grass-fed liver. A couple of good restaurants do. Yeah, they'll have patés. There's one old diner. It's like been here since, I don't know, like the 40s, and they serve a liver and onions and bacon dish that's absolutely delicious. So occasionally I'll go over there.
But you're talking a lot about liver, but doesn't liver store toxins?
Now, there's this belief that the animal liver stores toxins, and that's not really true. The liver converts the toxins for excretion, so it doesn't really store toxins. If anything stores toxins, it would be the fat of the animal. That's why we always want to try to get the grass-fed meat if we're going to eat the fat as much as possible.
Yeah, and I like what you were saying about the eyes and the dry eyes being relieved by increased vitamin A. A friend of mine thought she was stuck with this condition for life, and she was always putting little drops in her eyes. And when she switched her diet to include liver, it was either liver or desiccated liver supplements, her condition completely went away. And she thought she was, it was a life sentence basically, and it was not. And it's the power of vitamin A, like you're saying.
And it could have been a life sentence. I mean, I was experiencing that exact same thing. I went to an ophthalmologist and he prescribed Restasis for me in my late 30s. And I didn't really use it that much, but he
Mm-hmm.
says, you have dry eye. I'm like, oh. So, yeah. And you know what? Doctors are not looking at nutrition at all. It's always about, well, this is a medical condition and it needs a drug. Instead of, what is the physiology that could explain this? And what might this person be missing? And there's a couple doctors I don't get much pushback from, but I get a lot of doctors questioning. They say, oh, I don't know why your nutritionist wants this, and I'm not going to order it because I don't know if it's covered by insurance. And not everything that I ask for turns out to be a problem, but there are always one or two on somebody's panel that I ask for if the doctor's willing to order it. And I go, oh, that's it. That's what's going on. And the other thing is vitamin A deficiency isn't necessarily just vitamin A deficiency. Like I said, it could be implicated because it also prevents your conversion of carotenoids to vitamin A if you don't have enough. But zinc deficiency can look like vitamin A deficiency because zinc is involved in all aspects of vitamin A metabolism, including transport and release from the liver and stuff like that. So that's another thing you have to consider, especially if you've been on a long time high plant food diet.
Well, this is a great food for thought, no pun intended. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to say that. But really, I think we need to give great consideration to the role that our food plays in our health and pay a little bit more attention than some of the doctors do that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and not necessarily like your friend said, "Oh, this is something I'm just gonna have to deal with for the rest of my life." Find somebody who can help you with it, do your own research, try a couple things. Don't be afraid of trying some vitamin A, that's what I would say.
That's awesome. And let me ask you the question I often pose at the end, Pam. If the listener could do one thing to improve their health, what would you recommend that they do?
Well, I did just say try some vitamin A. A bigger picture, trust that ancestral nutrition really did have it right, and do everything you can to eat a wise tradition diet. And if you can't eat a wise tradition diet, get those whole food supplements like the desiccated liver and use those. Because as much as we learn now, as much as we're continuing to learn about nutrition, I almost never see anything in the research papers that really contradicts ancestral knowledge and the wise traditions of the people that relied on, the diet that they knew was going to keep them healthy based on the ancestral experience they had.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for this advice. And we'll all up our vitamin A. Well, at least I will. From this conversation on, I'm going to be very aware of it. Thank you so much for your time, Pam.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Hilda.
Our guest today was Pam Schoenfeld, the author of The Collagen Diet. Learn more about Pam and her work and resources at womenandfamilynutrition.com. And I'm Hilda Labrada-Gore. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the show notes for this and every podcast episode, just visit our website, westonAprice.org, and go to the podcast page. And that's it. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.